Okay, let me start by saying that this is coming out in October to be a Halloween themed video. So if you're watching this at some later time, don't think I have some weird fascination with cannibalism and decided to make a random video about it. But cannibalism does lead to some interesting moral dilemmas. Like, okay, we all agree the whole Hannibal Lecter kidnapping, murdering, and eating people thing is ethically wrong. So we have a baseline agreement there. But what about if person A goes up to Hannibal and person A has a desire to be eaten? They consent fully, they even sign a form if you want, and Hannibal, going off the consent of person A, eats them. Now what about this? Person A and Hannibal are stranded on an island starving to death. Person A is like, hey, once I die of natural causes, I give you permission to eat my body so that you may live. This later situation is probably the most ethically acceptable instance of cannibalism. But why is that? How did we go from a strong no example to a maybe yes? To figure this out, let's go back to our kidnapping murder example that we all agree is wrong. We all intuitively agree that kidnapping and murdering and eating someone is wrong. But why is it wrong? There's a couple reasons, and perhaps by examining these reasons, we could apply them to our other hypotheticals to see if they're wrong as well. The first reason that pops out to me is the lack of consent. It's the one issue that differentiates this example from our other two. By murdering and eating someone against their will, you're ignoring their bodily autonomy, the right to make choices regarding their body. Lack of consent makes these invasions upon our bodies, such as murder and cannibalism, wrong. But that begs the question, would consent then make it okay? Murder is wrong, but euthanasia is more of a debated topic. The right to end one's life if one consents to it. If we were really gung-ho that consent and control over one's body is an absolute moral standard, then what more overt example over control over one's body do you need than that of the right to dispose of it? If you can't choose to voluntarily discard it, is it really yours to control? But euthanasia is another issue altogether. However, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm willing to bet that relatively more people are okay with consensual euthanasia than consensual cannibalism. Someone on their deathbed in pain with a fatal condition deciding to voluntarily end their life seems relatively less morally wrong than someone voluntarily deciding to end their life and be eaten. But I guess this also is working off the assumption that cannibalism must coincide with death. I guess there can be instances of a limb being taken off of someone and consumed without the death of the individual. Is that situation preferable to euthanasia since you aren't losing an entire person? In addition to the euthanasia complications, we might also question the mindset of someone consenting to cannibalism. After all, who in their right mind would want to be consumed? And in criminal law, someone not in their right mind doesn't meet the mens rea or mental intent requirement of a crime and could avoid culpability. Overall, the consent issue is one reason why murder cannibalism is wrong, but it seems that it's not the only reason, and our discussion regarding euthanasia and consensual cannibalism and mental stability leads us to believe that there's something more. A second reason why cannibalism in general is wrong might be due to an understood respect of bodily dignity. Bodily dignity differs from bodily autonomy, in that it's not always about control and consent. For example, someone on multiple drugs who's an alcoholic and eats unhealthily is consensually doing these things using their bodily autonomy, but it's arguably not respecting bodily dignity. Likewise, someone consensually agreeing to be cannibalized may be using their bodily autonomy to consent to it, but in our eyes it doesn't seem to be respecting bodily dignity. Why do we treat corpses with respect and care, even after the person is dead and can no longer consent to anything? Why do we think of things like necrophilia as abhorrent, even if the soulless corpse isn't capable of feeling consent or anything? I think it speaks to bodily dignity. The bodily dignity cause, however, has always been kind of hard for me to personally define. Like, what exactly is dignity? What is undignifying? Can this differ between cultures? Is this just a cultural phenomenon? Regardless, I'm sure many of us intuitively feel that there is such a thing as dignity, and it's another reason why any form of cannibalism could be seen as wrong. So I know we've been all over the place in this video, which is what happens when we don't work off an actual professional philosopher, but let's recap what we've talked about so far. In trying to determine why cannibalism is wrong, we came up with issues of consent and bodily dignity. Consent makes sense, but is incomplete as it doesn't explain our possible aversion to consensual cannibalism. Bodily dignity intuitively makes sense, but is also somewhat hard to define and really grasp. Let me bring up a third but somewhat problematic reason: waste. If a person agrees to be consensually eaten by another, assuming the two live within civilization, we might be repulsed by this because it's a waste of a human body. If the need being met is hunger, why not just go to a Burger King? To be fair though, I wouldn't be surprised if Burger King uses humans in their meat. Legally, I'm not making any truth claim about the content of Burger King's meat, this is just a joke. It just seems like you're wasting something precious, the human body, to fulfill a need that easily could be met elsewhere. Two problems with this though. One, we fall into this almost every day. If we really were solely concerned about hunger, we would all be living off Wonder Bread and rice. But I see you there spending extra money on the Popeyes $6 big box, and it's okay because I'm right there with you. This isn't sponsored by Popeyes or has anything to do with the video, but I just want to let y'all know that you get 3 tenders, 2 sides, and a biscuit for $6, and that's pretty good in an inflation economy. Anyways, that's problem number 1 with the waste argument. Problem number 2 is that it would still allow for cannibalism on the deserted island, when you have nothing left to eat. So let's actually return to that scenario because it seems to be holding up. As a reminder, you got 2 people on an island about to die of natural hunger. One person consents to their body being eaten by the other once they naturally pass, so that the other can stay alive. This is not affected by our consent issue as consent was given. Plus, it also doesn't trigger our waste issue because there's nothing else to eat to survive. Is our second issue, bodily dignity, enough to say that this is a morally bad act? Or would you say that this is a morally permissible act? After all, you guys have been through so much, why not give this person a proper burial? If you think this latter scenario would be made morally impermissible as a result of a lack of bodily dignity, then perhaps we have our trifecta of reasons why cannibalism is wrong that can address any scenario. In sum, cannibalism is wrong in that it can ignore consent, waste the precious resource that is the human body, and is an affront against bodily dignity. That's my attempt to explain it anyway. But perhaps you see things differently. Perhaps 3 reasons isn't enough. Perhaps one of these reasons isn't good enough. Perhaps Sir Anthony Hopkins himself is watching this video and wants to make a case for even the most egregious form of cannibalism. Regardless, I want to hear your thoughts below because this is a rare video where I make no reference to philosophers or their works. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Have a happy Halloween, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.